my question is, with all the shenanigans that are going on in the legislation, they all have to have surety bonds. Surety bonds. They're required. Why can we not make claims on these surety bonds for them not performing their job? This would stop, I think, a lot of this, because the insurance companies that they're covering these bonds are then going to have to come in and do an investigation.
Who wants to take that? Senator Pody.
That's a great question. I can tell you what's a better answer, though, rather than surety bonds, is this. We need educated and informed voters that can make a decision and decide if they're a patriot or if they're a phony. We need to get rid of the phonies and get patriots in there. We have a ballot box every 2 years for our state reps, every 4 years for our senators. Those that don't stand up for us, don't listen to the campaign talk, look at the votes they make and throw them out.
I'll just follow up on the surety bond specifics. So I'm just going to admit I have gotten, I don't know, 50 emails about surety bonds, and so I'm paying attention and I'm trying to learn more about them, and I'm following people across the country that are looking into this. I'll just say this. Here's what I do know about the surety bond issue. The problem is that you still have to go through the court system at the end of the day, right? If you're, I know, I get that, but at the end of the day, the surety bond issue is going to take you into the court. And the issue that I've found so far in the court system is that the court system is just as bad as the legislature, just as bad as anything else. And you've got judges, they don't want to deal with the issue. Just like when the Supreme Court told Texas that they didn't have standing as a state to challenge the elections. I mean, judges are looking for any way possible to not deal with the issue. So that's sort of part of my problem with the surety bond issue, that it still has to deal with the courts, and they seem to be a little bit meaningless, at least here in Tennessee to me. But I know there is more to it than that, and thank you for that question. And I am trying to find out exactly how that process works, because it is a thing.
Okay, guys, if you have another question, Kim in the black hat right there, black shirt, black hat with a mic.
So I have one question here. What protections do Tennessee employees have under Title 14?
Any takers? What protections do Tennessee have?
Let's go. So, quite simply, you need to understand that right now, today in Tennessee, your employer cannot fire you or take adverse action against you, which means discriminate against you on any basis in terms of your compensation, in terms of your benefits, in terms of whether or not you work at the location or remotely. They cannot treat you differently based on your vaccination status. Here's the kicker: only for COVID-19. That's important to understand. Current law only protects your vaccination status as an employee for COVID-19. If your employer wants to fire you because you didn't take a flu shot, they can. If they want to fire you because you didn't get a shot for chickenpox, they can. If they want to fire you because you didn't get whatever shot the next thing coming up is, they can. And the other bad thing about Title 14 is that, by the way, your liberty expires on July 1st, 2023, so that's a problem. So we have a bill where we're trying to address that right now, but you do need to know current state law. If your employer is threatening you in any way, shape, or form, based on your vaccination status for COVID-19, they're not a federal contractor and they're not a healthcare facility. They are breaking Tennessee law, and if you took them to court today, you would win and your attorney would get attorney's fees, and you should sue them.
And we just passed a law last week. It did not go through, the governor's not signed it yet. The governor's not signed it. But it does say this, that if you're fired because you took the vaccine or you refused to take any vaccination and you had a religious exemption, We said that the Attorney General would stand in for you, and it would come to the Attorney General, and this is for any medical exemptions that you sign. It has to be a medical exemption, but they can't ask you to prove it. It just says that you've got to say you have it, and not medical, but religious exemption. And so for religious exemption, you don't have to take any medical treatments whatsoever, and they can't ask you either. You turn it over to the Attorney General.
My apologies, but I have to follow up on that. That religious exemption bill only applies to healthcare. It also continues to exempt federal contractors. So it does a little bit. There's also language in that bill that says your employer can deny your religious or medical exemption as long as it's in a written statement. And also says that your employer cannot discharge you or threaten you if your religious exemption has been granted. So if it hasn't been granted and they've denied your exemption with a written statement, guess what the law says? They're legally protected to fire you. Now, I've got a lot of flack for saying that, and people disagree with me on that. I'm just saying that's what the letters say on the paper. So whether or not this law actually protects you will remain to be seen until it happens and until a judge interprets the words on the paper. So we'll see.
Good evening, thank you for being here. My name's Patricia.
We got to speak, get a little more clear, closer to the mic.
Hi there, is that better?
That's better.
Okay, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate what you're doing, supporting the truckers and all of us patriots here in the American public. I read that there is going to be a presentation to Congress. I think it was like the 6th through the 9th of March. Can you give any clarification on that and what might be presented if you're aware of it? I read it on a Facebook post. I don't know how valid it is, but if you have any information on it, can you shed a little light?
Is that specifically to do with the convoy going? No?
No, I think it's the part of the American convoy. I'm not really sure.
Okay. Yeah, that's different than this route. We've been trying to connect you with somebody that knows that answer. We got another question.
I want to know what gives Washington the right to tell us what to do to our bodies and our families' bodies whenever they work for us, the people of the United States.
So, to restate the question, if I understand it accurately, you're saying, how can people in Washington, D.C. tell us what we can put in our bodies and not in our bodies, and our children's bodies, especially those little bitty gentle bodies that we don't know if we do something now, that it may end up being something bad later. Correct, ma'am? Here's the best answer I can give to you. You need to get involved to the best of your damned ability. These people that work for you, and I've worked for them myself, you need to organize, you need to show up, you need to talk to them continually and constantly, respectfully to the degree that you can, because everybody has different opinions. You need to find out what section of your time and your money that you're going to give to end all this. We are in a free damned country. We're in a free country, and we're supposed to have all these liberties and freedoms, and they have been stripped away from us the last 2 years, and I'm as mad about it as you are. That's why I started my news publication. I'm not a journalist. Gary can attest to that. I'm not a journalist. Occasionally, I'm not even an accurate journalist, but you know what? I'm getting my best licks in. And honey, you need to do the same thing. Back home where you are, you find out where your state rep is. You find out where your state senator is. You won't get one as good as Mark Pody, but maybe you got somebody that's second best. And if you don't, you give some money to somebody else that's going to run against them. You get involved in that primary process. You stay attuned. You pay attention to Gary. You pay attention to Mark and what's going on in the legislature. Get you a group of people together. You go door to door for candidates that you really believe in. And honey, you teach your kids how to stand up for what's right. And when you do that, they'll follow your example, and your neighbors may as well. And I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you asking the question.
And the additional short answer to whether or not they have that authority is no.
That's the answer I would give.
Hey. I had a question about House Bill 1968, and what's the likelihood of y'all thinking it's going to pass? That's the Free All Cannabis for Tennessee Act.
House Bill 1968?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Give them a minute. Can you restate the purpose of that?
Do you know that particular one, is that just medical, or is it just free for all, like recreational, the whole deal? Yeah.
And then it's going to give home growers rights, I think, up to 12 plants per household.
Yeah. Oh yes, if you get up to a certain amount and on your property, there'll be no penalty. Yes.
By Bill Freeman.
Yeah. Well, he's got the answer for you.
Right, and before I answer that, I want to go back to this lady. I am guilty in the state legislature why the federal government is taking our rights away, because it's supposed to be state legislators that are supposed to say, you don't cross that line, your authority doesn't cross that line, and state legislators have dropped the ball and let the federal government come in and pretend that they are doing this. It's no different than if a parent says, here's the rules for their kids, you can't drive the car, but they let the kids drive it anyway. It's the parents' fault. And in this case, it's the states that were supposed to stand up to the federal government, and we have let you all down. There's so many people that are just going along to get along, so I apologize for that because we have not stood up. I've only apologized on behalf of the state legislature, not me, because believe me, I stand up every single time I can. Going back to your bill, I can tell you that it's not going to have the votes to pass it through. I don't think it's getting out of committee. As blunt as I can tell you, that's where it's going to be.
So smoking pot is an interesting question while I'm on the panel here. Because I did a poll with Tennessee Conservative News about pot smoking, and should you be able to smoke pot, should you not be able to smoke pot, etc. So just giving you a little bit of the political dynamic. So here's what we got, right? And if I did this again today, I think this would be the answer, just so you know in your own state. Most people, there's about 50% that are like, well, most people are like medical marijuana, fine. And then there's like a portion, like if you ever smoke a joint, you will be on the 9th level of hell, and you will never recover from it, and your entire salvation has now been rendered useless. And that's about, I don't know, that's about 25%, okay? Then you've got like about 50% that don't carry any weight. Then you've got about 25% that have lived in Oregon or have lived, whatever. Don't be counting numbers on it, Gary. God, he's such a know-it-all. Very humble. God, Jesus. And then you've got about 25%, quit counting numbers. He's even talking to me now. He won't stop. That are like, I've lived in Oregon, I've lived in wherever else, Colorado, and it's turned into a mess. And now we've got a huge drug addiction problem. And now it's leading into this, and it's leading into that. So there's some people that have lived in states where they completely legalized it, and they're like, this is bad business. I don't know, but I'm just telling you, in the state right now, if I did another survey on it, I think it's very divided in the Republican Party. So good luck to you and yours. I'll see you at 420.
Lori Williams, and I'm talking about Region Smart. How do we educate our area? I'm from Shelby County, and our government just accepted money for stormwater drainage without reading the actual bill. Thanks, all you aldermen, appreciate that. And they decided to bring us into this 3-state conglomerate where now a board can decide whether or not they have eminent domain over particular areas that they desire. How do we combat Region Smart? It's going through the legislative process right now. And then to that end, Mark, this is specifically for you. I would love for you to get into contact with Gary and produce a list of people that you would like to work with. Candidates that we can support. People that are good. We need good character people that we know are vetted by good senators. We need your name behind, you know who to work with.
You guys don't have marijuana legislation on your ballot, do you?
We want to support the people that you can make relationships.
What were they talking about marijuana a little bit ago?
In the government. That's what we want to be voting.
Maybe something? We haven't been following it. So.
I've got some good news for you today. We killed that bill this week. And as dead as a doornail. All right, let me just tell you something that happened over in your area though. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for whatever reason, we passed a bill in special session to tell a company that we will give them $1 billion to come to Tennessee. And we're going to give them the right to have eminent domain without an elected board over them, that they can do whatever they want with the property, not only that they were given, but the property next to them. That is horrible. There were only 3 of us that said that's not constitutional, it's not right, and nobody should take your money and give it to somebody else because they think that they deserve it more. That's wrong. And that was bringing in the board plan. You watch 10 years from now, we're going to say that was a day that we regret.
So, but I know we're kind of coming to a close. So before we get to one more question, I want to make sure that Kathy Harms has a few minutes to tell you, because look, she is a citizen. She's one of you, one of us, a citizen that in Williamson County that has dug so deeply into the elections process here in Tennessee and all of the little holes that exist that no one wants to talk about and no one wants to acknowledge. And I'm telling you, she knows what she's talking about. So I want her to take a few minutes on, I know where she's going to go. I'll just let her say the paper ballots. And I'll let her talk more about that.
How many of you think that the election in 2020 was upright and fair? Well, we had a lot of problems. And in the state of Tennessee, they're going to tell you everything is A-okay. Well, let me tell you this. There's 3 parts to every election. There's the voter, there's the ballot, and there's the count. 3 things. It's a simple equation. If you cannot authenticate the voter that it's legal voter, if you cannot authenticate that ballot is a legitimate ballot, and if you cannot authenticate that the count is the ballot that you cast was counted the way you cast it, that equation breaks down. So I'm here to tell you we need your help to get a paper ballot in the state of Tennessee. And we don't want just any paper ballot. Did anybody ever watch what happened in Georgia with those suitcases? Well, let me tell you, that could happen here. And it can happen here because of the laws that are on the books. There are only about 30% of all the counties in this state that even have a paper ballot. That's number one. That's not acceptable. But number two, where there are paper ballots, there's a machine called a ballot marking device. And in 2020, legislation was passed that said for a ballot marking device's paper, they do not need any serialized numbers or markings. Is that a good idea? No. We need a paper ballot that doesn't just show you the candidate. We want a hand-marked paper ballot that is currency grade. When you go to the ballot box, your ballot should be beyond reproach. It should not be able to be counterfeited. It should be able to be put through a machine that takes a picture of that ballot after you mark it, and there should be an identifier on that ballot that says it can only be scanned one time, and that you have the right to go online and see the ballots. We don't need costly audits. We don't need some mumbo-jumbo mathematician doing magic in a back room on an audit. There is no reason that every single ballot that cannot be put online for you to see when the polls close. Then what happens? It's the people's audit. You can see the ballot and you can be guaranteed that our ballots are secure.
Come on. We got one more question, Kim, right?
No, that was actually having Kathy just...
That was it? Okay. All right, awesome. Thank you. What?
Now, wait a minute. Apparently your listening comprehension was not attuned. This lady, did you ask the question? I'm sorry, you asked this question. Mark Pody, she asked Mark Pody, we need to know who we can trust in the legislature. Now that was a big question that kind of got glossed over. I got good listening comprehension. I'm kind of short and dumb, but I kind of listen well. And that was a big question. Who can we trust in the state Senate and the state House? Will you tell us who to trust? Now, Mark may not be able to do that because that would probably limit his ability to be effective in Nashville. But we're going to have a top 5 and a top 10 rhino list that the Tennessee Conservative is going to put out. We're going to have a top 10 in the House, and we're going to have a top 5 in the Senate. And these are like the people you shouldn't trust with your grandmother getting them across the damn street list.
Now we already know, but we need to know it's the rhinos. We already know we can't trust. Okay, go ahead.
So what we're going to do,
this is really important. These people need to know.
Gary over here, you can't do it. He looks like a garden gnome, but he's not nearly as innocent. So we're going to figure out. And I already know who most of them are, but there are some people right now in the legislature, both on the Senate and the House side, that we need to work to remove, and we may not be able to get rid of them this time around simply because people didn't run against them, although they should have. And maybe we didn't fill the candidates well enough, and maybe we didn't train people so they felt like they should run. So to the lady that asked that question, raise your hand, move around, she's not here. She disappeared. She went to the porta potty. She drank a beer. She smoked a joint, apparently, according to the other gentleman. But she's here somewhere. We're going to do that. So now, with no further ado, we are going to adjourn this. But it is coming. If you go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com, go over there to the table, we will tell you who not to trust. I don't know if we can tell you who to trust.
Let's give a hand to the panel. Great job, guys. Thank you.